Okay guys, it's going to be tough for me to fit this review into 10 minutes, so we're going to dive right in. Filled to the brim with open world sandbox, lots of dinosaurs, and lots of criticism from the Switch fanbase, here is my review of ARK Survival Evolved for the Nintendo Switch. When it comes to story, there's not really a lot to tell about ARK, but at the same time, there is a lot to tell. You're not really given any story as you play through the game, at least not until you get to the game's ending. It's really a game that's built off of lore that you find in the open world. There's plenty of story to tell, but you'd never figure it out until you actually beat the game. And of course, I can't tell you any of it because all of the story that's there is a really big surprise at the end, so to avoid making this a spoiler review, we're just gonna leave it at that. When it comes to gameplay, ARK Survival Evolved is a huge sandbox RPG with tons of crafting elements and some taming elements. Now before we get into the game, let's talk about the Switch version of this game. When you play ARK on the Switch, you have all of the base content for Survival Evolved. In other words, you have the island map, but we don't yet have the DLC maps. The way ARK is set up is basically like this. Once you choose a single player or multiplayer server, you create a character and you're dropped onto a giant sandbox island with nothing on you but the clothes on your back. You then have to collect materials and craft tools, weapons, armor, and anything else to help you deal with both the harsh climate of this island and all of the hungry dinosaurs that live there. The way you go about this kind of makes this game feel like a Minecraft RPG. You can collect materials from pretty much anything and everything around you. Bushes, rocks, dinosaurs, trees, and you use all of those materials to craft new items. And everything you do in the game gets you experience towards leveling up, which lets you increase your stats like health, melee damage, or carry weight, as well as unlocking new recipes so you can make more things to help you survive. And while this game does feel Minecraft-ish with how crafting works, the other elements of the game really take it away and make it feel like something that's not Minecraft Jurassic Park Edition. There's a huge emphasis on combat because this island is filled with an absurd number of carnivorous dinosaurs that want to eat you for lunch. Once you craft some weapons and armor for yourself, it really feels less like a Minecraft game and more like an action RPG. There have been many hikes I've done that started as material collecting quests that ended up being me just exploring and hunting down all of the carnivorous dinosaurs I can find. And there's also a really big taming element to the game. Not only can you kill dinosaurs, but you can knock them out and feed them to basically recruit them into your party. And this has so many uses. You could tame a T-Rex and keep it around your base camp so it'll attack anything that tries to attack it while you're gone. And while you're gone, you could tame a Pteranodon and basically get a free airplane so you can fly high above the island instead of dealing with everything on the ground. And that taming element really sets ARK apart from a lot of other games like it. Because let's be honest, how many games with dinosaurs allow you to actually tame and ride on those dinosaurs? It's a really big novelty thing, but it's a really big fun factor that has a lot of uses. But like I said earlier, there is a storyline to ARK and there is a main quest, so you're not just randomly going around and surviving for the sake of surviving. Your goal when you play ARK is to eventually find the 3 major bosses and take them down so you can access the final dungeon and that big story surprise ending. It's a bit easier said than done though. The actual areas where the bosses are pretty easy to find, but all of the artifacts in the caves are not. The caves are hidden so well it would be almost impossible to find them without online guides, and they're all on opposite ends of the map. That means that when you want to just summon one of the 3 bosses, you've got to take several all the way across the map tracks just to get what you need and then go back to summon the boss. Now the game does have fast travel, but you can't take any items with you when you fast travel. So either way, you're going to be making a lot of manual tracks just for one of the bosses, let alone all 3 of them. Now you've got a lot of stuff you can do in the game, but there is one major problem here. Nothing is explained to you in this game. Nothing. The game doesn't tell you how to collect materials, doesn't tell you how to craft, doesn't tell you what any of the buttons do, doesn't tell you how to tame dinosaurs. It's really a game that you have to research before you play. Unless, of course, you want to spend the first several hours of your gameplay pressing random buttons and hoping you figure out the game before that T-Rex across the river comes over for a quick bite. Of course, if you even breathe this question over to the ARK community, you're going to get a big debate about how this is how all survival games work. You're not supposed to know how to do anything. But when you've got so many things that you can do in the game, so many things that are very important to your survival, an in-game tutorial would have been nice. Now, once all of this starts clicking with you, you're going to realize that there is a ton of game here. The first local server I made for basically learning the game and going through the story took me around 50 to 60 hours before I got to the final dungeon. And that's with me tweaking a lot of server settings to speed up the process of resource gathering and progression. If you do everything legitimate in a multiplayer server, it'll probably take you a lot longer than that. Now let's get to presentation. There's been a lot of criticism around this game's performance and the way it looks, and some of that criticism is well justified. In both docked and handheld modes, the game seems to have a constantly changing resolution. The game could be looking fine with plenty of detail one moment, and 5 or 6 seconds later, it'll look like a blurry mess, and a few seconds later, it'll look better, and then a few seconds later, the tree will look like a giant polygon mess from the PlayStation 1 era. It really has no middle ground, and I can't really say the game looks bad because, I mean, it looks bad some of the time, but some of the time it looks good. So like I just said, it looks good occasionally, and that's what I'm gonna stick with. Now when we get to performance, there are even more problems. Frame rate is also something that's constantly changing. When you're flying high above the island or walking through an area that doesn't have many dinosaurs, the frame rate looks pretty good. When you start going into caves and having a lot of enemies on you, the frame rate drops a lot. Sometimes it drops just a little bit, and other times when you're swarmed with bug enemies, it looks like it's about to freeze and crash on you. It's really not optimized well, especially for those enemy-heavy areas. And speaking of crashing, the game likes to crash pretty often too. There isn't really a common trigger for the crashes. Sometimes it'll crash on me when I'm in the middle of sedating a Spinosaurus so I can tame it, and other times it'll crash on me when I'm just standing in the middle of nowhere not doing anything. This is especially problematic because the game doesn't autosave very often. I've lost tons and tons of progress over random crashes. And there are two more problems that we need to talk about. The first one isn't really as major. There are long load times when you load into a server. How long? Well, it varies. I've had 1-minute load times, 2-minute load times, and 7-minute load times. I think it might depend on where you are on the map when it loads in, but I've had times where the loading sequence has given me time to actually go make lunch and come back and not miss a thing. And the last thing we're going to criticize here is something that no version of ARK has been able to escape: all of the bugs and glitches in the game itself. From artifacts not spawning and dinosaurs rendering underground and dying from it, there are loads of bugs and glitches that are well known in the community that require you to log out and log back in to fix. And now let's get into battery life, which ends up being pretty expected. ARK Survival Evolved has a battery range of 2 hours and 16 minutes on high settings, up to 2 hours and 49 minutes on low settings. This is pretty much what I expected, considering this is a giant sandbox open world game. Now, in conclusion, ARK Survival Evolved brings the full ARK experience to handheld fans on the Switch. There's a lot of fun crafting, exploring, and taming to be done, but it's really brought down by a ton of glitch and performance issues. It's certainly playable, but you've got to be really, really patient with it. Reviews to Go rates ARK Survival Evolved for the Nintendo Switch a 4.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, or head to the website at reviewstogo.com.